Okay, let's start talking about biconditionals now that we're familiar with conditionals and converses. So the first thing that you want to know is that a biconditional is a combination of a conditional statement and its converse. The second thing that you want to understand is that it contains the words if and only if, which you will see is abbreviated as IFF, and that's not because we don't know how to spell if. Lastly, a biconditional exists if both the conditional and the converse are true. It's really, really important that both of these statements are considered to be true. Okay, the conditional and its converse must be true. So if we look at this example, it says, it is Christmas if and only if it is December 25th. So we recognize our if and only if, that's our connector, which means our hypothesis becomes it is Christmas, and the conclusion is that it is December 25th. Okay, so again, recognize your converse and your conditional both need to be true. And similar to a conditional and a converse, we're looking at a connector, and that connector is if and only if. So if we just ignore that connector, we'll be able to break our biconditional into a hypothesis and a conclusion. Okay, in order to write a biconditional, we need to look at a couple things. First, we need to be able to look at the conditional itself. So our example is, if I am 72 inches tall, then I am 6 feet tall. So our hypothesis is I am 72 inches tall, and our conclusion is I am 6 feet tall. If we look at the converse, that states, if I am 6 feet tall, notice our conclusion became our hypothesis, then I am 72 inches tall. Okay, in both of these instances, the statements are true. And because the statements are true, we can write a biconditional. And we can say, I am 72 inches if and only if I am 6 feet tall. So if and only if I am 6 feet tall. So again, we had a conditional with its converse. Recall the definition means I'm switching the hypothesis and the conclusion. Both statements are true, therefore I can write just one statement. Alright, this is an example for you to try. So the conditional is, if 2 points are collinear, then they lie on the same line. So you should be able to identify your hypothesis and your conclusion, and then write your converse. So if 2 points lie on the same line, then they are collinear. Okay, that would leave us with a biconditional that says 2 points are collinear if and only if they lie on the same line. Alright, let's make sure we can separate a biconditional into two parts, which is how we introduce biconditionals. So the example is, if you live in Washington, D.C., you live in Washington, D.C., if and only if you live in the capital of the United States. Statement 1 states, if you live in Washington, D.C., then you live in the capital of the U.S. So we made our hypothesis, you live in Washington, D.C., and we made our conclusion, you live in the capital of the U.S. So writing that converse would state, if you live in the capital of the U.S., then you live in Washington, D.C. Again, noticing our hypothesis and conclusion have switched. Okay, again, this is an example for you to try, and you're really doing yourself a disservice if you just sit and watch the video versus pausing the video and seeing if you can do this, especially if we decide to give a daily quiz tomorrow and see what you can figure out. So we have a conditional statement because we have the if and only if. So that means our first statement, okay, is if a number is divisible by 3, then the sum of its digits is divisible by 3. Statement 2, you switched and says if the sum of the digits of a number is divisible by 3, then the number is divisible by 3. Being able to have a conditional and a converse that are both true helps us write some good definitions. All right, and a good definition is a statement that can help you identify or classify an object. So there's several components. We want to be able to use clearly understood terms. In other words, the term should be commonly understood or already defined. A good definition is also precise. Okay, they avoid words such as chunk, sort of, some. And a good definition is also reversible. It means you can write a good definition as a biconditional. So if we ask for a biconditional in class, one easy way to write a biconditional is to pick a word and its definition. Okay, a couple quick examples. You should pause the video and check. A triangle has sharp corners. No, definitely not a good definition. Perpendicular lines are two lines that intersect to form right angles. Yes. And an airplane is a vehicle which flies. No. In addition to writing all these notes down, you should be looking at the note summary and answering questions 1 through 5.